Hey, what's going on, guys? So today we're going to go over the basics of Lightroom on our iPad. So number one thing you got to do is obviously have those photos on your iPad. So if you took photos on a phone or a camera, get them over there by either airdropping them, getting them on Google Drive, and downloading them, emailing to yourself. However you got to do it. But once we're in our iPad, we can go into Lightroom, and you should have something that kind of looks like this. If you haven't created an album yet, you should have a button down here on the bottom left. So go ahead and click it. I'm going to name mine Photo 1. Whoop. And now we can start adding photos into here. So I'm going to click on that album I just created, and it says it's empty. So I'm going to go to the bottom right with that little photo icon with the plus, hit it. I'm going to choose from my camera roll, and you can choose multiple photos at a time. After you've selected them, just go ahead and hit add. And from here, I can start editing. So I'm going to choose this one right here. And for the edits, I'm going to go to the top right where there's those three little lines with some circles. That will get us into the development mode. And I can choose any of these. So like light, I can adjust. My colors, I can adjust. We can do some effects on there. I can go into details. And those are the only ones that we're going to be dealing with today. So off the bat, what you might want to do is go ahead and hit auto just to see how it affects it. So I'm going to hit undo and then auto. Again, it brightens it up, it changes the color a little bit. You can do this, and I don't mind if you do that, but I don't think that that's the end all be all. You have to go back into the lights and the colors and the effects and affect it yourself to give you your own artistic touch. So we can see nothing is at 0 anymore. The exposure went up by 0.7. They upped the contrast, they lowered the highlights, etc. So for this, I can just click and drag and I can see exactly how it's going to affect it. So your exposure is going to affect your overall lighting. Your contrast is going to, affect how dark your darks are or how white your whites are, versus if you want to make it flatter or a little more gray. Your highlights are going to, I can make just those specific highlights, so the really, really bright parts in my photo brighter, or I can bring them down. I'm going to bring them down lower than they were already, so I can have a little more definition in the sky and in those clouds. My shadows will affect kind of like your medium grays, so I can bring those up more, or I can lower them. So depending on how like moody I want this photo, will depend on how I affect those. Your whites are the true whites in the photo, so I can make those really gray, which I obviously don't want to do, or I can blow them out and make it so it's overexposed. Again, don't want to do that. So little adjustments in Lightroom make a big, big impact on the photo. So again, your blacks are your true blacks. So something like that's looking good. Let's say this highlight, I want to see where it was in the beginning. So bring it back to 0. I just have to double click and it'll bring it right back. And that's for any of them. If I just want to double click, it'll bring all of them back to 0. So if you're used to Photoshop and you want to go into your curves, there's this little S looking icon at the very top to the right of light. So I'm going to click that, and I can go ahead and put the points on there like I would in Photoshop for my curves. And remember, a curve is ideally just like a small little S shape. So I'm going to bring the top up just a little bit and the bottom down just a little bit. And this is affecting that overall contrast of my photo. So kind of like what we did with this contrast slider, I can do it here. So this top one is affecting my lights and my brights. This one's affecting my darks. So if I want to have them darker, I bring it down. If I want to have them brighter, I bring it up. So a small little S is all I care about. Then I can go back into my colors. So the colors are going to affect your hues, your saturations, your vibrancy of those colors that we are choosing. Or you can go into black and white mode. So if I don't want to have color. Again, they're just sliders. So if I want to have like a cooler toned versus a warmer tone, I can just bring that up or down. If I want to have it a little more green, or if it was too green and I need to add a little magenta, I can add a tint. I can up my saturation to really pop out those colors, or I can start to desaturate it if I wanted to have like a really gloomy feel. And then we can start down here messing with the specific hues of each color. So let's bring up my saturation again, and I go to my greens, and I'm like, okay, I like how everything else is looking, but those greens are just a little, maybe too dark for me. So I'm going to bring up the luminance and maybe saturate them a little more. And then maybe I want to add a little more yellow into them, so I may change the hue a little bit to make it look maybe like dead grass almost. And I can do that for each individual color if I wanted to. The effects, be careful with these because if you push them too much, it will start looking Instagrammy. And remember, we want to stay away from any kind of just filter feel. So if you add way too much texture, it's going to affect it that way. And it just is, it looks way too edited. Same with clarity, right? So like it does do something kind of nice up in the cloud section, but everything else is just looking so rough. And we can do more edits like that in Photoshop to really isolate certain areas. Dehaze is great if you're shooting in more of like a foggy area because it will help get rid of some of that. But if you're not, it's just going to kind of mess it up. So like those clouds just get pretty bad. I don't really mess with dehaze personally, and I really stay away from vignettes. If you go to the left, it's more black. If you go to the right, it's more white. Again, we can do that in Photoshop, but I just personally, I don't enjoy that look, so I don't really mess with them. And then I always avoid digital grain. It never looks like film, so I would not touch that one if I were you. The things that I do touch in detail, though, are sharpening. Sharpening is going to add just a little bit of sharpness and bring stuff back into focus. If it's a blurry photo, you won't be able to get it unblurry. That's different, but it will just kind of like really take those pixels and kind of bring them together in a sense to get it sharpened for you. And then noise reduction, if you're shooting at night or if you have any kind of that noise in your photo, so like those little splotchy areas that, especially in your darks, you will notice them. It doesn't look like a nice crisp darkness to it. Your noise reduction will help get rid of that. So again, you don't want to do a lot though. A little bit goes a long way. So just a little bit of noise reduction. And that's about it for this, right? So if I want to see what it looked like before, I just click and hold on the photo. So I'm just clicking and holding, and that's my before, and that's my after. So Lightroom makes editing so much easier. In order to like save it, I'm done, I'm ready. I go up to the top right, this little icon that looks like a rectangle with an arrow popping out of it. I click it, and then there's options where I can put it right into Photoshop. If I click that, I can export as, or I can just share to. So I'm gonna hit share to. It's gonna ask me where do I want to share it. It's taking a little bit because there's some edits that it has to do. I'm just going to say save image, and now it's putting it right back into my files. I hope this helped everybody. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Have a great day.